We're going to go ahead and get started with our community development meeting tonight. Today's date is February 13th, 2025. The time is 6 p.m. I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Eberlein, Duncan, and Matari. I'd like to make some chairman's opening remarks. First of all, thank you all for coming out tonight. This is actually something that Commissioner Duncan started, and I really think it's a good idea and that I'd like to continue that. If you have a comment that you would like to make tonight, please make sure you fill out a white or pink sheet in the back of the room. All public comments will be civil and respectful, and please address the Board of County Commissioners and not the audience when you're speaking. Refrain from applauses as it interferes with our process, but do feel free to raise your hands if you are in agreement with the speaker at the time. So thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Poll for conflicts of interest. None here. Let's begin with our public hearing. This is for ZON24-0005 Rivelle. It's an action item, and I just want to give people an idea of what to expect. The staff will introduce the application, then we will hear from the applicant themselves. After the applicant's testimony, we will then go into the public comment sheets, where I will read off the names and/or people can come up and provide comment for 3 minutes. We will hear from those who are in favor, those who are neutral, and then those who are opposed. The public not speaking will be read into the record. We will then give the applicant and/or representative an opportunity for rebuttal of any testimony stated into the record from the public before we close the public hearing. After that point, we will receive no more testimony. The time limits are 30 minutes for the applicant's presentation, 5 minutes for the public testimony, and 15 minutes for the applicant's, actually it's 3 minutes, excuse me, for the public testimony per person, and 15 minutes for the applicant's rebuttal. I would ask that you direct all your testimony, again, to the board and not to the audience. Are there any questions regarding these proceedings tonight? Hearing none, I will go ahead and ask that Vlad from Community Development give us the presentation.
Good evening, Board. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. I'm not sure if it's on. It is. This is a request by Rivelle, aka Sandcraft, for the approval of a zone change from agricultural suburban to commercial. The subject property is located at 1742 West Blackwell Mill Road. It's located just adjacent to Murphy Marina and just west of Blackwell Island. As you can see, based on the aerial the Google overlay, 3D Google overlay, the subject property is located in this highlighted area here, and you have Murphy Marina to the east, and then you have the Hagedon Marina Yacht Club farther east. The current zoning in the area around the subject property to the east is commercial, as well as you have some city, I believe C17 and other commercial zoning within the city limits of Coeur d'Alene. The comp plan designation for the subject property is shoreline, and then the adjoining comp plan designation is transitional. The property is located within the City of Coeur d'Alene area of city impact. When the applicant initially contacted our department to discuss the possibility of rezoning this property from more of a residential zoning of agricultural suburban to commercial, as you can imagine, with every parcel that is requested to be further intensified along the lake, staff is concerned on the impacts that it would have on the lake and surrounding parcels of land. And when we found out that the request was for a similar use that was adjacent to the proposed property, we advised the applicant that we would in fact be amenable to them moving forward with a zone change request as long as they put together a conditional zoning development agreement that would restrict the use of the property in a manner that would be consistent with what's next door. Specifically, the purpose of the...
Just gotta change out the microphone.
Yeah, let's see if we can get a little better audio.
Hopefully this is better. Can everyone hear me? I don't. So the purpose of the conditional zoning development agreement is to limit the scope of uses of the underlying zone. As you can imagine, a commercial zone allows for a variety of uses that could be detrimental to not only the adjoining parcels, but as well as the lake. So when the applicant put together their conditional zoning development agreement, we reviewed it in our department along with our legal counsel to make sure that it did comport to the conditional zoning development agreement section of our code, as well as the scope of uses was limited to what they intended, and which is a marine service business where they would remove the existing residence and garage from the property and then construct an office. They would also create a staging area for their equipment and their materials, and then they would be constructing, hopefully, a dock and a boat launch for part of their daily operations. So the document was submitted, it has been reviewed and slightly modified by our legal counsel, but if the board moves forward with the approval of the request, it is ready for execution after the decision is made on this matter. As you can see, this is the site plan. This is where the building would be located. It would be located along the western property line. This is facing north. There are two existing access approaches off of Blackwell Mill Road, which is a public road under the jurisdiction of Worley Highway District. The existing approach along the western property line would remain in its current state. It would not be modified, and it would be left as is. However, the approach along the eastern property line would be modified significantly to a commercial approach to allow for vehicular traffic of all the vehicles as well as any heavy machinery that would be brought on site. Then the applicant does intend to grade the property. They are looking to modify the location of the base flood elevation in order to make the necessary improvements associated with the request. They're concurrently, I'd like to mention that they're concurrently requesting a variance to the 25-foot shoreline management area allowed uses. That will be part of a second public hearing tonight after the closing of the zone change request. But they're looking to make a number of improvements in order to make this site feasible for their proposed marine service business. These are some of the existing photos of the property in question. As you can see, it's been primarily used for residential use for many, many years. During the agency comment period, we received comments in support of their request. There were very few recommendations that are technically cannot be conditioned as part of a zone change application, but they would be involved as part of the building permit process should the zone change be approved. I would like to point out that it's rare that we receive a letter of support with the explanation for the need of this type of business and the benefit it would bring to the community. And as part of the review process, the applicants submitted in advance of this application moving forward through agency and public comment period, they did get a support letter from Sheriff's Department as well as from the Kootenai County Parks and Waterways Department. And they provided an explanation as to why this is an important business for the county residents. During the first public comment period before the hearing examiner, we received a total of 7 comments in opposition of the request. And for this hearing, we only received 1 additional comment in opposition of the request. Primarily, the concerns that were raised were with regards to the compatibility of the proposed rezone and future use with the adjoining parcels to the west that are residential in nature. And at that hearing, we heard quite a bit of testimony about the existing use of the property and so forth. But I'd like to point out that in review of the application, we did state that the proposed zone change with a zoning development agreement, as I stated in my introduction, would limit the scope of operations, and this service business would be adjacent to an existing marine service business that's been there for decades. There would not be a compatibility issue in that regard. There are other uses further or farther east within the city limits that are similar in nature. Both Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and Kootenai County Parks and Waterways support the request. And I'd like to point out that the request is also consistent with the shoreline designation with the Kootenai County Comprehensive Plan shoreline designation, because it specifically contemplates non-residential uses limited to services needed to support resource seasonal shoreline and recreational operations. The hearing examiner heard this request on November 7th of last year and subsequently recommended approval of the request. I don't know if you need me to get into the details of what the hearing examiner had stated in their recommendation, but I'd like to sum it up with the fact that their analysis was very similar to what staff had submitted in the staff report. So the comments are very similar in nature, and they did support the application. I don't think I have anything else to add unless you have questions for me on the zone change application before you.
Anyone have any questions? No. I actually have a couple. Could you kind of describe some of the limit of the scope of operations involved with this?
Absolutely. So the conditional zoning development agreement, and it's highlighted in yellow, Chairman Matari, it says that the applicant proposed to rezone the subject property to a commercial designation to operate a commercial marine service business. An office storage building will be constructed in place of the existing residence, along with a driveway parking area, a bulkhead, and the waterfront improvements will include a boat launch and a dock pier. One of the things that was, I also would like to point out that one of the things that was concerning at the first hearing before the hearing examiner is that the applicants had, concurrently with our application, submitted an application to the Idaho Department of Lands for the approval of their ramp and dock piling. And the question was, why is it that the county allowed the applicant to move forward with a concurrent application with the state? First of all, we don't have the jurisdiction over what the state does, nor can we stop the applicant moving forward in that direction. It seemed as if the public was concerned that the applicant had the cart before the horse. The department sees it in a slightly different way. We find that what the applicant has done is they're showing their good faith to say, we're doing the right thing to try to work with all the agencies at the same time to be transparent and say, we have been able to receive the necessary approvals from the Idaho Department of Lands for the improvements that are below the ordinary high water mark, and we're concurrently seeking a zone change and the potential improvements for everything that's above the ordinary high water mark. And so we find that to be actually a benefit to say, okay, if you have one agency that has already approved something that is going to be an integral part of the proposed use, then there's really no question in our mind that if we approve something, will IDL deny it? Obviously, they had gone through that process and they received approval. Now, are they doing this at their own risk? Of course, but we feel like they're doing the right thing to make sure that everybody's on the same page of what is going to happen on this site.
Okay. And just one other question. You mentioned that there was a marine business there?
There is no marine business on this site. There's
Okay.
marine business right to the east of the subject
Okay.
property.
All right. Then I didn't hear that correctly, so thank you. Okay. The applicant's representative, Scott Hislop, would you like to speak?
Yes, Chairman Butari, thank you.
And we'll have to give this presentation an exhibit number.
Read into record as B 1001.
All right. Thank you. My name is Scott Hislop, and I am counsel for Rivelle LLC. It's an affiliate of Stancraft Companies. Before jumping in, I would like to incorporate the hearing examiner's report and analysis in what I'm saying. I'm not going to go through it all, but know that I'm going to be referencing it, and hopefully you guys the board has had a chance to see it and review that as well, but I wanted to include that. Also, a preliminary matter, the CZDA has been negotiated through council. We've agreed to it, and if this is approved, if the variance is approved, then it will be signed and we're ready to go. All right. At the risk of being duplicative, I do want to start and put this information into the record. The parcel information, as Mr. Vlad or staff pointed out, the parcel here is outlined in red, and to the east we do have Murphy Marina. You can see the two metal shed roof type items. Those are coming out. That's where boats are moored. Even further to the east is Hagedon's property. You can see their marina. Just in the top corner of this photo, one can see the RV park and the boat sales spot. Going to the west of our parcel are some residential homes. And then about where the W is on West Blackwell Mill Road is a community dock known as the Chowder Club. There's a bunch of sailboats that live there. I'm
sorry, can you point out just where that is? Is that the little dot to the left?
Right.
Okay,
right
yep,
there
okay.
is the community dock of
Thank you.
sailboats. Yeah. So this entire bay,
Go ahead, sorry.
this entire bay is Cougar Bay. Here also in this area around the parcel is an unpermitted log boom. So this area of the lake is next to the mouth of the river, and a lot of water that flows through the lake ends up running into, actually all the water running from the lake runs through the mouth of the river out the dam. And so lots of logs get caught in here. This is a combination of those types of logs that have gotten caught, captured, and left. There are also remnants of logging businesses that have been there since about the 50s. So this area of the lake is historically the working end of the lake. The log rafts that you see now are not really log rafts. If I could blow those up, you would see their docks. So currently there's an underwater or submerged land lease for this portion and a submerged land lease for this portion. Idaho Department of Lands leases these areas to two marine construction companies. One of them is Murphy, and one of them is Standcraft. So during the winter time, fall to June 1, those people who don't have the ability to store their dock at their house, we grab it, we pull it over here, we put it into Cougar Bay, and we save it. June 1, we pull them all out and redeliver them to their site. So again, this is kind of the working end of the lake. Oops, wrong way. Can you help me, Vlad, push that forward? Well, perfect. Thank you. So the area itself is mixed in its use. There is some residential, as we identified right next to our parcel. Our parcel is the one highlighted in yellow. This is inaccurately drawn on this particular diagram. The dock storage is to the south. This is that unpermitted log boom. Our parcel, this is a work zone for Murphy's where they construct and fix docks. This is the marina. This is the Murphy's Yacht Club itself, Marina Yacht Club, Cedars, the river, NIC. So not only is this historically a working area, but one can see it's trending towards the commercial side of what's going on. Current zoning, Vlad's gone through that already. Staff has gone through that already tonight, so I won't go through more of that. Important to note, though, and I did note that staff was talking about the transparency in answer to Chairman Matari, your question. We did make application to IDL, and we have asked them for encroachment permits. That's the actions waterward of the ordinary high water mark. The things we're looking for from the board tonight are those things landward of the ordinary high water mark. So IDL controls that stuff waterward, and in that we've asked them for 6 different encroachments in this particular area. And the final findings were issued in on January 20th, where it was approved and all of our encroachment permits were granted to where we'll have a working area, a larger commercial dock, a working area outside, and then we also received the approval to do the boat ramp, the bulkhead, and the pier system inside the water. I have referenced in the slide here, that's case number 24-320-06. If it's online, people can look it up if they'd like. This is what was approved. So when IDL gave us our encroachment permit, this is what they've approved. One can see here the ordinary high water mark. So waterward of that line is what IDL granted us. This is the pier system. The wider dock portion is the piered system. This is a narrower portion that's floating. This is going to be part of the work zone and part of the work zone. Part of our requirement, this unpermitted logjam, is something we're removing. So we're benefiting the community, benefiting the county, benefiting the lake by removing this unpermitted logjam. You can see in this photo, this is Murphy's work area, and then these are the two marina spots. Also, additionally, we received the ability to put the bulkhead in, which is here, and the boat ramp is in red. So the watermark, waterward is IDL, watermark landward is for this board to talk about. Our proposed uses. We have a commercial dock currently, and we have now our final approval of the other encroachment, so we have the work zone as well. So our design and our site plan, our goal, as staff showed this drawing earlier, this is what our layout's going to be. It's hard to see here, but right where the dot is currently, there's a line with an X that runs its way down to the east of that driveway. As staff pointed out, that's an existing driveway for the neighbor's property. It does cross over onto our property, their driveway. We're not modifying, changing, or encroaching or taking their easement away. They're still going to have that. We're not improving their driveway, but we are putting a fence where that line and X mark is. That will be a fence with vegetation barrier to provide some visual barrier from our commercial space. And then staff already went through our building, our access point coming off of the road, and space to turn around. So in this amendment request, what is it that we, as the applicant, need to be showing to staff, to you, the board? It's these four things: that the circumstances which justify the proposed amendment, we have to show why the proposed amendment promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare. We need to show the effect that the proposed amendment will have on the property, and why the proposed amendment would not be in conflict with the comprehensive plan. This site has been and continues to be commercial in nature. This dock itself is a commercial dock. When we bought the property, shortly thereafter, the encroachment permit was granted. That was a commercial spot. So the area itself has been used as commercial. It was the owner prior to Stancraft was a tug company, and historically, photos going back to the 50s, the entire area was logging. This amendment will bring the parcel into conformance with the waterward use. So had a commercial dock, now have another commercial dock in a commercial work zone. Water allows us to use the commercial, to have commercial uses. The zoning on the land should conform, and that's what we're requesting to do, that conform to the use that we have in the water. The other circumstances which justify the proposed use or change, this site will provide critical services to the county through our memorandum of understanding with the sheriff's office. And some of the comments that were given by Department of Waterways indicates that using this space for commercial purposes is convenient and helpful and efficient for the lake and for the community and the citizenry of Kootenai County. Why the proposed amendment promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare. Can't deny it, there's going to be a positive tax benefit. Kootenai County will receive a positive tax impact on this with this application approval. There's quality jobs. Stancraft has approximately 300 employees, and they're locals. Stancraft prides itself on bringing people into the area and providing jobs that families can use, have, and pay for a living in the area, keeping people local. This will expedite emergency marine services response times. There is a marina next to us, but we have an MOU with Kootenai County to help provide for those emergency services. Having access here is very centrally located. We can get down the river, we can get across the lake, we can be at the resort. It's a central location. Granting this amendment would also open up public ramps and water access. Currently, Stancraft deploys approximately 250 wooden boats annually. We also, on our marine construction side, have boats and material and tugs being brought onto the water, taking off the water. If we don't have our own access, we need to use other access. That would have us go to public access, and in times of Ironman, the dead of summer, those times where there's lots of public access, if we're putting boats in, taking boats out, if we're taking material on and off the lake at the same time in those public spaces, it's going to be crowded, and the public's not going to be able to use the space. If we have a spot away off the highway, not through downtown, we won't be having material, we won't be having boats and those things going through town. It frees up the public access to the lake. Again, the location of this particular spot will also provide transport. So if we have material that needs to go up the river or down the river or across the lake, we won't have to chug it as far. During public comment at the public hearing, there was a question of why not use the property we own at Wolf Lodge Bay. Wolf Lodge Bay is a very eco-conscious spot, and there's certain times of the year where we're not allowed to go in there because of the depth of the water and some of the other habitat. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of our environment as well. But that's a spot that's pretty much the furthest away on the lake from any other spot. So the efficiency of having this location makes it better for the citizenry, the water, and the environment to get access to the water here. The effect the proposed amendment will have on the value and character of the neighboring properties. There's no doubt that change has impact. So I can't stand here or talk to the neighbors and say there's going to be no impact. That's not a truthful statement. There will be impact. There's impact if we do nothing. We own this property and nothing happens. The house gets dilapidated. That's a negative impact. However, our proposal and why this amendment is important is we have a purpose and a reason to take care of this property and put our business there. We have a plan that will prevent the gross negative impact on the neighboring residential users with our fence and our vegetation. The impact on the property on the other side, which is already a commercial marina, there's no negative impact there. We're doing the same business that they're doing. So there's not a negative impact to them. I want to address, again, I think this one can see a little bit better in this photo. One can see that line with the hash mark. And I brought this site plan up again because I did listen at the public hearing, and there was concern about what it would look like from a neighbor looking at a commercial site. And that's why this fencing is here. I mean, I didn't put a picture to represent what it would look like, but that's what site plans show as a fence. So we do, running the whole length as far as we can down towards the water, put a fence that will help obscure, prevent the visual impact on our neighbors to the west. I want to go back here just one second. Sitting from this perspective, this neighbor and then running westward, the view they have currently is of a marina. Right? We have 150 linear feet here along the water. So 150 feet away from this property line is a marina. 150 feet away from this property line is a work zone. They've got that commercial stuff there already with there's some arborvitae here, but there is an opening where people can see what's going on. So we're not necessarily changing the view. The view is that view. In fact, we believe that our pier system, our new ramp, our bulkhead, and the dredging that we were able to do here is going to be beneficial to this area. And the way we do work, I think one can go to the Jet Center, one can go to our manufacturing facility. Stancraft prides itself on the quality of work that it does. Enthusiastic public agency support. Staff pointed out 2 letters of recommendation that came with our application, one from the sheriff and one from Parks and Waterways. Quote in the letter from Parks and Waterways says, the marine contractors are critical in order for Kootenai County to provide safe and accessible recreation facilities to our waterways. Notably, marine contractors are uniquely equipped to provide specialized marine services during local emergencies. Again, we have a relationship with Kootenai County, Stancraft, when I say we, Stancraft has, with a memorandum of understanding to support that. I do want to point out the language in the hearing examiner's analysis. It's on the right there. I have a couple items that I've bolded, but this statement is important in that hearing examiners don't write this way typically, at least in my experience. The application also contains another unique feature that is critical to supporting its approval. That is the enthusiastic support of both the county parks and the sheriff's department. Rare are the situations in which applications contain enthusiastic support for such agencies. These were not bare approved or no opposition comments, but specifically worded letters of support. This should be afforded significant weight. So our hearing examiner, our collective Kootenai County hearing examiner, is saying this to the board. Afforded significant weight, and it's rare. One of the other things that we need to be paying attention to and providing to this board is our conformance with the comprehensive plan. The request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan stated goal, and the request is consistent with the general objective. Stancraft's use of the rezoned property, if that rezone is approved, and the existing commercial dock and the dock that we've now received approval for from IDL will serve the people of the state of Idaho and Kootenai County. Staff already went through the discussion about shoreline and what that means. Important to note here, I have for shoreline designation, so if it's going to be a non-residential use, it should be limited to services needed to support resource, seasonal shoreline, and recreational uses. That's almost the definition of marine services business. This is exactly what this is designed to do. In conclusion, Kootenai County Sheriff's report states that the staff supports the zone, Kootenai County staff report states that it supports the zone change requested on the zoning classification and use in the surrounding area. The zone change is the best interest of the public. The zone change is consistent with the goals and objectives of the plan. The zone change is a natural progression given the existing uses in the area, that being the working area of the lake, and the increased need for marine service business. That came from the sheriff and Parks and Waterways. Also important to note, the hearing examiner finds that denial of the application will have a material adverse effect on us. Again, we were conscious of what the public comments were, and the hearing examiner, I believe, was as well. This hearing examiner notice is important. I think it encapsulates that. There's never a perfect situation or parcel for converting residential to commercial uses, but such changes should be allowed under the right circumstances. The hearing examiner believes that those circumstances exist here, given the totality of the facts associated with the proposal, especially its proximity to existing commercial enterprises of the kind. The CZDA, that agreement that staff talked about, will prevent other less compatible commercial uses in the future with the context of this specific application and the applicable regulations. That's the hearing examiner taking what he heard at public hearing, taking the law, putting it together, and making a finding. Stancraft requests the approval of the proposed amendment change with CZDA. And if I can, I'll answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions?
I have one.
Sure.
In some of the documents it mentioned, or some of the complaints, was about vegetation in the area. Do you have a plan? I don't necessarily know that we can attribute it to any one use, but I mean, you're not going to be able to function with high vegetation in the water either. So is there a plan for that?
Vegetation in the water itself?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the answer to your question, I think, is yes, there is a plan. We can't foresee what's going to happen. At public hearing, there was talk about weeds and other things that happened in that area. There was also discussion from IDL that said, 7 years ago, there was a complaint from the neighbors that there were a lot of weeds and seaweed that washed up on the beach. So that's pre us owning the property, right? And the explanation that IDL gave was, this is the mouth of the river. All water runs through this area. This is a collection point of stuff. And so we'll do what we can. In this particular case, there was a request. We came and looked. We didn't think it was our issue, but we did pay to have the seaweed removed this past summer. So we've already been part of that solution.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Commissioner Eberlein? I have a couple questions for you.
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that the dock that's already there is a commercial dock
Correct.
and that it was used as a commercial dock.
Correct.
Can you describe a little bit about what you know that it was used for, in essence?
Yes. What we understand, looking at the historical pictures that are there, I mean, we didn't own it, where we bought it a year ago, but we've seen from historical pictures, tugs, logs, and use that way.
Yeah. Any idea of the intensity of that? Was it, wasn't a large company that owned that lot, or?
There was a large company that owned it,
Yeah.
but we didn't buy it from a large company.
Okay.
So it was used by a large company as a tug business years ago.
Large would be defined in your eyes as?
Napton,
I mean, like, I would consider Staincraft, one could argue it's medium because it doesn't exceed 1,000 employees, but it's a pretty large company for this area.
I would be guesstimating.
Yeah,
I don't know how large Napton was.
yeah, okay. Could you go back to that image where you had the blue kind of dock going out into the water and then cutting over across the logs that are floating? The image of the lake, do you
Yes.
recall that one? Yes, so the proposal is for Rivelle to build that blue structure,
That's correct.
so that would act as a water break for the residential properties?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify that is indeed what that was. You mentioned the vegetarian barrier, and part of the reason I have these questions is because, it's right next to people's homes.
Sure.
And I don't know what it has been like to live there prior to this issue coming up. I presume that with some commercial activity, there was, some activity that a residents could notice, if not hear. But I think it's important just to at least ask these questions to understand the nature of the intensity and things like that. So you mentioned putting up a vegetative barrier, excuse me. Yes, and what's the height of that you plan to put up?
Put up whatever is part of the landscaping code.
So minimum or just like what would that be, do you think?
I'm not sure what the landscaping code currently states, but
it'd be high enough that the next door neighbor wouldn't really be able to see easily in there.
Yeah. It'd be high enough to follow the code.
I think it's 6 feet, but I think we're getting some verification on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it for right now. Could you maybe just describe a little bit how you see the operation working, in the peak time seasonally? What time in the morning are people going to be hearing, commercial trucks when they back up? You have that beeping noise, or you're going to hear guys kind of screaming across the dock, hey, throw me the rope or do this. I mean, how does that kind of look like from an intensity standpoint?
Right, so we'd be following the sound ordinance.
Yeah, whose sound ordinances? I mean, we don't have a sound.
The county does not have sound regulations.
Okay.
The city does.
Okay, but it's
We would not be able to enforce that.
okay. So how would that kind of look, the day-to-day operations?
I think we'd mirror the city's sound ordinance. I mean, there's a time to go to work in the morning, and there's a time that it's not to be at work.
I mean, if you had hours of operation, would that affect you? Reasonable hours?
Reasonable hours wouldn't affect us.
Yeah, okay. I'm just asking these questions. I'm not suggesting it. Okay. But you don't have an idea of how you see the intensity, what the average amount of traffic might be coming in and out?
I would only be speculating at this point. Obviously, we want to have as much business as possible, but we also want to be a good neighbor.
Yeah.
We've got people next door here. I'm not sure when they take off or when they go. I'm not sure of their timing of hours here. But 150 feet away, they're doing the same thing.
So barges are coming in and out and loading up stuff?
Barges are right
like
here.
that. Yeah.
This is
Okay.
a work zone here.
Okay.
In fact, I think I can, in an appendix.
And forgive me for asking all these questions, because you know this stuff. I haven't
you're-
gone down there to, look at anything or at any point in time.
You're fine.
Frankly.
This is a picture standing in the area, looking towards Murphy's. So this is a barge, and this is some craneage.
Okay.
This is that the unpermitted log boom.
Sure. Okay.
This is looking at the very start of our dock. There's that log boom, and there's the marina, and there's the work zone.
Okay.
This is our neighbor. So this is what you look at when you look across our property currently.
And that's looking towards the east,
That's correct.
northeast a little bit.
Correct.
Yeah. What about the other side? Do you have a picture looking in the other direction?
There you go. That's looking from the end of the dock.
Uh-huh.
So this is our parcel. This tree sits about on the property line. This is the neighbor. This is their dock with their boathouse.
Okay.
And this is about on our corner. This picture was also in staff report, but this is a corner of our property line looking towards, this is at low water, so this is currently, right, wintertime.
Yep.
Looking at the marina of Murphy.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my questions for now. Commissioner Eberline, have any questions?
I just got one question. What's the closest properties, residential properties? for
What's
where
the
you're going to
closest?
be? Yes.
This property right here.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then leaving that picture up, are the boats going to be launched on which side of that
They'll
picture?
be launched on this side.
Okay.
So all of our boat launching, our bulkhead is here next to the commercial area. Going back to Chairman Matari, your picture.
So it'd be on the red side of.
That's correct. This is our boat launch. This is our bulkhead. So our taking off of barges to the land would be done here. Our taking off of barges to the dock, which is why we have the pier system, so we can save some of the vegetation, would happen here. And our access coming in would be here. We do have the ability to use this portion. The property line is here, so we can put some boats here. But most of our work would be in this area here, and then working out in this area for the actual work zone.
And then that next door neighbor is really right under the E, under encroachment. The home would be
Correct.
under
This
the
is-
E? Or,
That's correct.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, this is their dock right here, the one that we saw with the boathouse. That's their dock here. So you can see their property line right here. So their dock sits on the property line approximately.
Any other questions? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate it. Okay, next up will be, we're going to open this up for public comment. Those in favor, And I'll go ahead and start reading some names. Well, we have Stephanie Blaylock, applicant representative, may wish to speak. No? Okay. Mackenzie Ridgewell, in favor, does not wish to speak. Scott, we already have you. That's having spoken. Josh Horvath, in favor, may wish to speak. Is Josh here? Do you want to? You don't want? Okay. Let's see. Mike Paul, in favor, may wish to speak.
Yes, available to speak if needed on civil site stuff.
Okay. But you don't want to come up and add anything more here. Okay. Is it Nels Erickson? In favor, does not wish to speak. John Chiono, in favor, does not wish to speak. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your names here. In favor, Craig Hamilton does not wish to speak. I want to say Zon Johnson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Colton Carlson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Wyatt Tooley, in favor, does not wish to speak. Adam Willingham, in favor, does not wish to speak. Scott Garvin, in favor, does not wish to speak. Joe Howland, in favor, does not wish to speak. Do we have anyone here who is in favor and would like to speak? Do we have anyone online, on Zoom?
Chairman Matar, we do have 3 people on Zoom. If anybody is in favor and like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself. If not, there'll be a time for people not in favor to speak.
Would anyone like to speak on Zoom? Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Robert Ray. I'm with the Cougar Bay Sailing Club and Chowder Society. And I just want to say that it's. I think that we at the Chowder Club we support the Standcraft proposal. We appreciate the idea of having a maintained water break instead of the currently log jam situation that is there. And so overall, we are in favor of that. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, thank you. Anybody else would like to speak who is in favor?
Chairman Matar, it looks like Tom Burns is trying to speak. Tom, you need to unmute yourself.
Tom, you'll need to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Tom Burns. I am the business manager also for the Cougar Bay Sailing Group. And I would like to emphasize what Rob Ray has told you. We are in very strong support of this project. We find that Standcraft has been exceptionally forthcoming and very open in the process of explaining what they plan to do. There is one comment that is not included thus far that I would like to make, because Standcraft has also agreed to monitor and clear away deadheads in the area south of the new work dock or extension that will cross over in front of our property, moving east to west. And that area is loaded with deadheads, floating logs, and Standcraft's ability to provide a higher level of safety for all boaters, I think, is exemplary and certainly is an indication of the kind of company that will make a good neighbor for us. So we as a group wholeheartedly approve. And that's all I wish to say.
Well, thank you, Tom. Anybody else would like to speak in favor? Okay, hearing none. I don't have any comment sheets for neutral. Is there anyone who's neutral on this and would like to speak? Anyone on Zoom, Jonathan? Oh, I'm sorry. In neutral? Because next will be opposed. Okay, hearing none, we have, oh boy, I want to say Bradshaw, opposed and may wish to speak. Would you like to, you want to come on up? Come on up to the microphone, please. Go ahead and just get yourself, go ahead and get behind the microphone there. And your first name?
Dell.
Dell, okay.
And Scott's singing a good tune here. I've heard it like 3 or 4 different times now. But something, I don't know whether any of you been down there and looked at that property. I was told once, probably not. But the fact is, he's talking about things that, he said that that dock was permitted. He hasn't showed any papers at all whatsoever that said that that was ever a permitted dock. Never has been. Now, my wife's family has lived there for 80 years, 90 years. The whole family lived there, grandfathers, everybody. We had that whole stretch from the house right next to what they're tearing down is a cousin, you know, and it went on. But a couple of the places have been, the family died and sold off. But anyway, he's talked about the weed issue a little bit. We don't care about that. But right now we just want to know that the cart isn't pulling or in front of the horse. And he hasn't mentioned anything about the dredging they might do to make that boat ramp so their barges can get in there. And we don't know about who's following up on that, because it's supposed to be a Superfund site because of the minerals in the lake. That water flows right down through there, and if it's not blocked off, it goes around and right into the Spokane River and heads down the river. Because now I don't know, is this a pier? You're saying it's a pier, Scott?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's
pier. So the boats that are in that boat area now that they store, you know, they go up, rent it for the summer, you know, so they're going to be going out under the pier.
Yeah, Dell, you have to just address the board here on your comment.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So,
okay, well, so that's just another thing. And like I say, I'm a one-man rodeo here because I'm just part of the family, and I haven't been too much involved with this thing. But due to health problems, my brother-in-law, which is kind of doing this, and Dr. Chapman, that isn't here, and didn't probably realize that he had to be here. He's been doing that, but he went through a lot of research to find out that those docks were never permitted. At one time, it was called Bricks Marine, and one of the neighbors down there that lived next to our properties was running the place, and I think he operated that. He parked his boat there, and he worked everywhere he could, you know, but I don't think it was ever permitted. And that was from Bricks Marine. And he just happened to sell the property to Sandcraft. A pretty good little sum. But I'm just saying that, you know, I don't want you guys to just go out
you're
there.
You're going to have to wrap it up in a minute.
Guys to just go out and just blow this off, because there's issues to be seen on that. He keeps saying, well, the next door neighbor, Murphy, it isn't Murphy, it's Hagedorn. Hagedorn owns the thing now. He even made a comment one time that said about the dredging, well, Hagedorn dredged it over on his part. Why can't we? If he can do it, we can do it. You know, well, I don't know. Maybe Hagedorn Corporation is welcoming him with the open arms, but I don't see why. And then the Kootenai County Sheriff He's already got a boathouse there, right there.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask you to 10, 15 more seconds, just wrap it up, okay?
Okay, just don't run off this thing, is all I'm saying. I'd like you to put a little effort and time and see what we've got down there. You know, just, that's all I ask.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I have a Mrs. Bradshaw opposed, does not wish to speak. Is there anyone who is opposed and would like to speak?
Chairman Matar, we do have one person on Zoom, Dick's iPhone, if you want to unmute yourself.
Go ahead and state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Are you speaking to me?
Yes, I believe so. Can you state your name? And you have 3 minutes. This is for opposed.
I'm in favor.
Okay.
And my name is Richard Sayre, S-A-Y-R-E, and I am in favor. But you've passed through that. I'm happy to speak to being in favor, but not to being opposed.
Well, you're welcome to speak because I'm sorry, but we tried, and maybe your microphone was on mute or we just couldn't see it. But please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you. That's kind of you. I'm also a member of the Cougar Bay group that Tom and Joe have spoken to earlier. I have intercepted a number of deadheads out in the area that Stancraft has promised to police. There was a point in time when Ed Hagland, originally working through his company, and that was Lafferty's, when he was working with Lafferty's, and then later in time with Boss Maritime, would pick up the logs and bring them in, and either they'd create boards with them or they'd dispose of them. But over the years, as all these companies have changed, all the logs that are down on the bottom of the bay in there, that was an old log storage area. They are all rotting, and as methane is produced, they float, and then they become deadheads. And I've intercepted a couple, damaging a propeller and a rudder and banging into my boat. Other people have done the same, and I watch speedboats go ripping through there, and it just scares the daylights out of me. So that's my personal experience in there. So from my standpoint, having that area policed and clean would be wonderful. We also have an existing breakwater, which helps us with storms, but as you can see from the pictures and the description, the existing breakwater is no more than a log float. It's all the deadheads that have been floating in, and Ed and others go out and tie them together with large cables, and that protects the beach area for those of us who have boats and docks in there as storms come up. If that will fail eventually, and Ed will be unable to continue doing it. So there's a number of reasons why we favor this proposal. There's been a lot of boat traffic in that area. A number of commercial enterprises have done commercial work in that area. We're used to seeing vessels coming and going. It's not a shock to us to have tugboats in the area. So none of the proposal that Stancraft has presented is offensive to us. We think it'll be fine. And as a member of the Cougar Bay group, we're in favor of it. I'm a former Commodore, which is a president of a Marine club. And we, as the others have indicated, we strongly favor the proposal.
Okay, well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate it. At this point, I'll just make a final request for anyone who would like to speak online, on the telephone, if anyone's there, in the audience. Oh, Vlad, did you want to?
Sorry, I'd like, if you, I remember you
Turn your microphone.
I recall you had a question regarding landscaping requirements along residential parcels adjacent to the subject property. Do you still have any concerns or questions in that regard? Because I have the code sections that I can enter into the record where it requires certain landscaping.
I was just curious about the height and density.
We do have landscaping requirements under section 84603C for those commercial parcels adjacent to residential zones. And it does require a 15-foot wide buffer in conjunction with a 50% side obscuring fence. And then there's other requirements that go along. The reason that staff did not address this as part of the zone change application, because it's a given that when a development occurs on a commercial parcel of land, these regulations are reviewed under the site disturbance and building permit process automatically. So it's not necessarily an integral part of zone change review, but it's more of a building permit and site disturbance review. And when we review the site disturbance plan, and we look at the site plan and we look at the location of buildings and parking lot and other improvements, we make sure that there is sufficient room left for the vegetative buffer that's prescribed in this section of the code. I don't know as to the height, but perhaps the side obscuring fence and the vegetation that will grow over time will provide a buffer from the adjoining residential parcel.
Yeah, it also acts as a sound deadener too a little bit. But Commissioner Duncan, did you have a comment? Question?
Will that come, if they do a building permit, that will not come back before the board, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Okay. The applicant has an opportunity to speak. Scott, if you want to come on back up. You have 15 minutes.
Thank you.
If you feel you need it all, please take it.
I will not need it all. Committee Chairman Tarriott, we do also have, in your packets or in your file, there is a landscaping plan that was submitted along with it, and it does provide a number. I don't have enough to pass out, but you do have it in your files. And on there, it calls out the code section. It calls out the height of the fence, which is currently a 5-foot tall fence. It also calls out the number of trees and what types of trees they are, the bushes and those sorts of items that would be in that area. And so, at least on mine, it's called LS 101, so landscaping 101 at the bottom right corner.
We have it.
Okay, great. So on the plant schedule, one can see the number of plants or the quantity, the code, what they are, trees, shrubs, grasses, that sort of thing. If that's helpful.
Well, it's an LS page, so let me go up and if you go to your bookmarks, go on the bookmarks, and then it will say landscape plan. Just gonna keep scrolling down.
Did you want to go ahead? You can go ahead and continue it.
Okay, great. And then just to address a couple items, the existing commercial permit is of record. It's filed. It's recorded. I didn't produce it because it's of record. And then the final order that was granted by IDL does go through and grant the permission to dredge, put the bulkhead in, put the pier system in, do the non-navigational aids, do the navigational aids. All of that has gone through a public hearing process. The administrative law judge made recommendations, and then the director of Idaho Department of Lands made final ruling. So we've been through quite a process in doing that. But other than that, if there's any other questions.
Does anyone have any questions? No?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Well, that concludes this part of the hearing for zone. I would go ahead and take a motion to end public testimony and enter in deliberations. Do we want to make a decision tonight, or do we want to push this off to a date certain?
I'm comfortable deliberating right now.
Okay. You're what?
Comfortable deliberating right now and making a decision.
All right.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and I'll take the motion.
All right. I move that we end public testimony and enter into deliberations for ZON24-0005.
So moved.
Commissioner Eberline?
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan?
Aye.
Chair Matari?
Aye. Okay, we're in deliberation, so we will no longer accept any comments or feedback from anyone else. Who would like to start?
I don't mind starting. When I look at these things, especially zone changes, looking at the surrounding areas and a compatible use with the place to the east, I feel like it would be picking winners and losers if we were to choose to deny this application for this use, and especially with the conditional zoning agreement, development agreement, I'm comfortable with that. It's not an easy task what they've gone through with IDL. They've got to jump through all the hoops, even though they have the relationship with Kootenai County existed before Stancraft bought the current marine construction business. And so it's not, nothing was a done deal. They had to go through all the hoops. I like the idea of maybe they look at the Coeur d'Alene City Sound Ordinance because they're right there on that border. And I know their CZDA also says that they would not turn down annexation. So I would be comfortable with that. I think the buffer is good, and I think it'd probably be an improvement over the conditions right now. So I'd be comfortable approving this with the CZDA.
Commissioner Eberline?
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, you know, first of all, anything that I think we're talking about related to the water and below is Idaho Department of Lands. It has, it's outside of our purview for the county commissioners. There's a couple of things here that kind of stand out to me. First of all, there's clearly a need for the service on the lake. You know, this community has grown. We have a need for it. And I think that, you know, there is this one side which is the greater good for the community. The other side to this, of course, is the fact that we're likely going to see a higher intensity use on a parcel of land that is right next to where someone lives. And, you know, that is a process that we're going to experience more and more as we grow. And my hope is that the applicant will do their very best and go at least beyond the bare minimum to be a good neighbor and to try to mitigate the effects of commercial activity, whether that's through a little higher vegetation, a little denser to deaden the sound, those kinds of things, recognizing that today there's a much greater sensitivity to it, but as time goes by, things are going to change because it's clear the direction of that part of the lake and where it's going to go. You know, with respect to the county departments agreeing that we need the service, from that pure aspect, I understand and agree with it. I'm not so sure they were tasked with assessing the impact to the local neighbors in there, because if they were asked that question, I'm not so sure they'd get the same exact letters written. So that's all I would ask, is that the applicant maybe go a little bit above and beyond the bare minimum to try to mitigate the activity and how it affects you know, the people living there, and being a little bit sensitive to that in the early morning hours and perhaps in the evening. But at this point, I think that, you know, they are trying to do that, and I think if they could do a little more, it would make for a much better situation in the longer term. So with that, I'll take a motion.
I move that we approve ZON24-0005, the Rivelle, with the conditional zoning development agreement.
May I make a statement?
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely.
I have worked with these guys before at the airport, and they always do what they said they would do. And even they had some problems that wasn't even their problems, and they took care of it. So I think I'm very hopeful that it'll work out.
Okay, we have a motion. Do you want to make a second?
Second.
Commissioner Eberline,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Motion carries. Next up is item 2, VAR 24-0007 Rivelle. This is an action item, and we will begin with our Community Development Representative, Vlad.
Good evening once again, Vlad Finkel for the record. Commissioners, I'm not going to bore you with the slides that were presented in the zone change application. They're identical. What I would like to start with is when the applicants originally contacted the department about the zone change, they also explained to us that the scope of proposed uses on site, including the boat launch and then the bulkhead or the staging area, would have to be constructed in the shoreline management area, which is a 25-foot distance from the ordinary high water mark. At the time, we advised them that while the zone change application that you heard tonight was a reasonable request because of the compatibility and uses in the area, we struggled with the variance application or the need to deviate from the allowed uses within the shoreline management area under section 87111 of the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code. And typically, as you know, a variance, it could be requested to 3 different things, and legal counsel can correct me if I'm wrong. It's to structures, uses, or a combination of structures and uses. And typically when staff takes a variance request before you, it's a matter of a deviation from setbacks in cases where you have slope conditions or you have other physical features that prevent the applicant from being able to comply with the underlying zoning setback requirements. In this case, what the applicant was asking for is the ability to construct those structures for the overall scope of their operations on the site in order to facilitate direct access to the lake for their marine service business from land onto the water. And our code has specific allowances which are listed under section, as I stated, 8.7.111. There's 12 items that are listed under that section, none of which the applicant would meet. And so when we had the conversation with them at a pre-application meeting, we said, okay, you have to make your case why this is a variance and how it falls within the sideboards of what the code requires for the approval of it. So as with the zone change request, we went through the same process requesting responses from the same agencies, and the responses were identical. Everyone was in support of the application, or in fact, like our 2 departments, the Parks and Waterways as well as the Sheriff's Office, submitted a letter with addressing the need and the benefit for this type of use. We actually went through the same public notice process, and they had the hearing the same night as the zone change request. And majority of concerns in that meeting were relevant to the zone change, specifically the compatibility. There was very little information brought forward by the public with regards to the variance request in this case. So I want to point out that primarily the concern was with the zone change rather than the variance. But one of the things that I did want to point out is the fact that the shoreline management allowed uses prevent having a boat launch as well as a bulkhead creates a, if you can imagine, a virtual, fictitious wall that you can't pass through for these type of uses. So you have the ability to conduct a marine service business beyond the shoreline management area on the land side, and then you conduct similar uses below the shoreline management area within the jurisdiction of IDL. So you have this virtual wall of non-allowed uses under the shoreline management standards. And so what we did in our staff report, as well as the hearing, we presented the evidence that if the applicant is not granted the ability to encroach, or if you will, basically delete that 25-foot setback, they would not be able to operate their business. That's the bottom line. So the variance is to be able to pass through and utilize that virtual wall that's created by the restrictions over the use of that shoreline management area. I hope that makes sense. One of the other things that we felt is that if they're forced to have their bulkhead and other improvements further away from the lake, they would have to have, a huge crane to be able to transport the material and equipment onto the water. So they need that short distance to be able to move all of the equipment, all the material, and then transport it quickly onto the barge or any other vessel, and then do with it as they need. So that was another reason why we felt that it was important to consider approving the ability to have the bulkhead as well as the boat launch for that specific use within the shoreline management area. The comprehensive plan, as I mentioned, has the goals and objectives under the shoreline management area to allow for commercial, non-residential uses that would allow for these types of service businesses with the ability to encroach and take over the shoreline management area. So we find that in conjunction with the hearing examiner that heard this request on November 7th of last year, that the variance should be granted in order for the applicant to be able to conduct their business now with the approval of the zone change. Additionally, I'd like to point out that I'm not sure if all the commissioners are aware, but at least two are, is that in the last few months, the board, directed staff to look at the possibility of amending our regulations to allow the shoreline management area to have these type of uses in it. We are currently working on it diligently to try to move it forward for a public hearing. Hopefully that can be accomplished in the near future, which would alleviate the need for any other business similar to this one having to go through a variance process if they do have a parcel in a commercial zone. So with that said, I stand for any questions that you have before me.
Does anyone have any questions?
No.
Nope. Okay. Thank you. Next up, the applicant's representative, Scott Hislop.
Thank you, Committee Chairman Tari.
And I believe you have 30 minutes. No, yep, 30 minutes.
We'll probably need to get an exhibit number for this one as well.
I beg your pardon?
Exhibit number.
Thank you very much. Exhibit B, 2001.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Scott Hislop, and I'm here on behalf of Rivelle LLC, a Stancraft affiliate. This variance application was filed concurrently with the zone change, which was just approved. And so I too will try to, I have in my slides information that that is duplicative, so I'll try to speed through that as much as I can, but I do want to, if there's questions you need to go back on, I'm happy to do that. I just don't want to make sure I say the same thing over and over again. For example, parcel information. We all know where we're talking about now. Staff did make a great point in that, pardon me, we are talking about now this 25-foot spot. I hadn't thought of it before, but staff's analogy of a digital or vertical wall that's we can't see, that you can't go through, is a great analogy. At that 25-foot mark, we stop. We can look at the water, we just can't get there. So, basic information, this site is trapezoidal. It's gently sloping towards the water. That 25-foot landward of the ordinary high water mark is relatively graded. It's agreeable physically as a characteristic to put in a boat launch. We can go down. We're not going to do a lot of cutting there. We will have to do some fill, as we saw in the last presentation, for the bulkhead, but it's all on site. So it's agreeable to what we'd like to do. The restrictions articulated in the SMA prohibit us, once we get to that 25-foot mark, prohibit us from crossing it. It just is not one of the 12 exceptions. Likewise, the pier dock. We have the pier dock. We just can't get that 25 feet, or the portion of our pier dock that would fall within that 25 feet. Likewise, the bulkhead. That portion of our bulkhead which falls in that 25 feet, we can't do it, even though we have a permit to do that. So our variance request is just that. Let us go into the 25 feet. The exception to one of those 12, we're asking to have a variance. Not too dissimilar from building a house. You want to go 5 feet closer than you're supposed to. That's what we're looking to do. We want to go in that 25 feet. What do we have to show? Variance code 8.8.203.4A, B, and C. This is the elements that we need to show in order to say that, hey, a variance is appropriate in this case. I'm not going to read all of them. They're in the code. For A, I'm going to leave off the 8.8.203. It gets tiresome to say that all the time. 4A, the applicable procedure requirements have been met. We made application. We signed it. We're the property owner. We went through the process. We had public hearing. Public hearing examiner had findings, made drafts, conclusions of law, and findings of fact. We have gone through the process. In fact, in this case, the hearing examiner has drafted proposed conclusions of law for the board, 6.01, 6.02. We have met the requirements. The hearings have been held. For B, that we're under a hardship, and that hardship exists because of the characteristics of the site. I did identify it's trapezoidal. We have a highway on one side, we have a property owner on one side, we have a marina on the other side. Unique in this situation is we have water on the other side. And the very nature of the water and the code itself, the SMA, is our hindrance. The parcel, this is what the hearing examiner identified in his analysis. This parcel fronts the lake, and the shoreline setbacks apply to that rear portion of the parcel. Therefore, the relevant physical characteristic of the site is that it constrains the lake shoreline. So the very nature that we're a marine construction and marine services business on a commercial piece of property with commercial rights to use the water, and we can't get to it, is the hardship. (4B1). So the subject property has exceptional or extraordinary physical characteristics such as irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or slope. The hearing examiner went through analysis and came up with this summary quote. These are non-exclusive examples of typical characteristics, that being irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or slope. And so that the physical characteristic can conceivably be deemed to be the shoreline. The shoreline can be that restriction for us. And again, the parcel contains that shoreline, which is the extraordinary physical characteristics causing us hardship in the SMA of that 25-foot setback. The hearing examiner also gave the draft conclusion of law 6.05 that we have demonstrated that the subject property has exceptional, extraordinary physical characteristics. 4B2, because of these physical characteristics, the strict application of the provisions of this title that are the subject of the request variance would create an exceptional undue hardship upon the property owner. Essentially, the SMA prohibits the use of our land. The hearing examiner states, a strict application of the code creates the exceptional hardship in the marine services businesses can't get direct access to the lake. For B3, we have to show that it's not self-imposed. We didn't draft that code. So, it's conceivable that any marine construction company or commercial use, as staff pointed out, who wants to get access to the lake on a commercial piece of property for commercial uses that they're entitled to on the water, if they're barred from going across that 20-foot spot because of code, it's not our fault. Again, the hearing examiner on 6.07 recommends approval of the finding of conclusion, the conclusion of law that we have demonstrated the hardship. 4C, that the variance will not be in conflict with the public. Here, the adverse use, there's no adverse use of the adjacent properties, the boat traffic, the vehicle traffic, those types of things aren't going to be negatively impacted by this variance. We looked at the earlier slideshow where we come into the property, where we've heard from the Chowder Club how they use the water, how they go out, how they come in. None of that's impacted by approving this variance. I note for the board staff's analysis that they agree that the proposed variance will allow for use of structures which will benefit the citizens of Kootenai County by granting this variance. 4C2, the variance will not change the character of the zone. The variance is proposed in conjunction with that zone change. We got the zone change. We need to use it. We want to use it. C3, public benefit. We talked about that a bit in the zone change, getting access and using the property, being able to go across that 25-foot strip to put boats into the water, to get material off the barges, onto our trucks, get them out, is better for the community. We're not going to be using public access. The variance is for public benefit. There are public agencies that also provided insight on the impact. We've heard that already this evening in the prior hearing, that being Kootenai County Sheriff and Parks and Waterways. Parks and Waterways has a very large impact in that this is their area. We're working as a marine construction company in the water. Parks and Waterways has a big impact. So here, a letter from Mr. Snyder says that marine contractor is critical in order for Kootenai County to provide safe and accessible recreational facilities to our areas and waterways. Notably, marine contractors are uniquely equipped to provide specialized marine services during local emergencies. We need to get across the 25 feet. On the screen now is our site plan. We've seen this before. Here, just pointing out, sorry. Here, just pointing out, here's the ordinary high water mark, the yellow line, the ordinary low water mark, and we're talking about the 25 feet in here. So we can build up to here, we just can't go across to get to here and build this portion in here. There was a question at the public hearing that I want to address a little bit. I've identified on the site plan here is the stormwater. It's our job in this process to contain the stormwater, contain what happens. If we're doing some cutting, we're doing some filling, how do we contain what happens here? Engineered drawing, that's what this is from Veritas. This is our stormwater retention area, and it is close to the water. However, it's not in the water, and we are able to contain, based on engineered numbers, all of our stormwater on site. During the public hearing, there was a question or a concern, hey, that's not big enough. Hey, it's way too close to the water. I just want to address, this is what that an example that exists today, this is what that looks like. Okay? And this particular stormwater retention area is in existence 300 yards to the east of the subject property. It is close to the water. This is where the picture I just showed you, that's where that stormwater area is. So our engineer has said we can contain it on our site using the same type of process that currently is being used next to the water here. So we are able to contain our stormwater on site. So in summary, there are other places where we could get onto the water, but we have a commercial piece of property. We've gone through the process with IDL, extensive. We have the ability to use the area. They've granted us the right to go into the water and dredge. They've granted us the right in an encroachment permit to put a boat ramp in. We just can't get there. So a variance, the request that we have from the variance is allow us to go across that 25 feet following the rules that are in place, and we'll be able to maximize and use our property. I believe the hearing examiner summarized it best in his report, in that he says that still the situation is unique in that the strict application of the code creates the exceptional hardship in the marine services business, can't get direct access to the lake. This would be an absurd outcome, and therefore the hearing examiner concludes that the approval of this variance to allow proposed quote-unquote development within the shoreline buffer is appropriate and serves the public interest. The applicant believes, and I think I've shown, albeit a bit brief here because we've gone through these slides kind of before in the zoning portion, that 8.8.203C4, A, B, and C have been met. It's reasonable. It makes sense to grant this variance, and we've satisfied those elements. We request that the variance be granted. With that, if there's any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Questions? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. The first sheet I have here is yourself, Mr. Hislop, in favor, and you have already spoken. Stephanie Blaylock, applicant representative, may wish to speak. No? Okay. Mackenzie Ridgewell, in favor, does not wish to speak. Mike Paul, in favor, may wish to speak. Okay, thank you. Josh Horvath, in favor, may wish to speak. I don't have anything. Okay. Nelson Erickson, in favor, does not wish to speak. John Chiono, in favor, does not wish to speak. Zach Johnson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Craig Hamilton, in favor, does not wish to speak. Wyatt Tooley, in favor, does not wish to speak. Adam Willingham, in favor, does not wish to speak. Scott Garvin, in favor, does not wish to speak. Colton Carlson, in favor, does not wish to speak. Joe Howard, in favor, does not wish to speak. Lucille Bradshaw, opposed, does not wish to speak. And Dell Bradshaw, opposed, may wish to speak. Mr. Bradshaw, are you here anywhere? Yeah. Well, if he happens to show back up, he can speak. Jonathan, is there anyone online or on Zoom who would like to speak in favor?
Tom Burns, go ahead and unmute yourself and speak if you want to speak.
No comment. Don't wish to speak.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to speak? Thank you.
Richard, would you like to speak?
Anyone want to speak who is opposed?
There is also Rob Ray.
Would Mr. Ray like to speak?
No,
Opposed?
no, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in attendance tonight who would like to speak who is opposed? Seeing none, one last chance online, Zoom. Okay. The applicant has an opportunity to speak again if he'd like to. Okay. I think that pretty much concludes what we have at this point. We can end public testimony and enter into deliberations. If someone wants to make a motion.
Move that we end public testimony and enter into deliberations for VAR 24-0007.
Concur.
We have a second.
Commissioner Eberline,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan,
Aye.
Chair Matari.
Aye. Okay, we are now in deliberations, so there's no additional testimony to be given. Who would like to speak first?
There's been a lot of speaking tonight.
Yeah. If no one has anything, we can move right into a motion.
Yeah, I think it's relevant, and I really appreciated the hearing examiner's take on it. And so I thought that was very reasoned, and because the interim ordinance has not been put into place, therefore, the variance, I think, was the proper mode to go to.
Commissioner Eberline, would you like to add to that?
I think that's going to make a safer lake.
Yeah. Well, again, I think that this there's a need for it in this community, and my sentiments remain the same, that I trust that they could be good neighbors and find ways to really extend that olive branch for folks. And I think there's some misunderstandings, too, about the process and who's responsible for what and things like that. And I think it's helpful sometimes just to spend a couple minutes and try to explain that. But with that said, I'm in support of it, so